The Guatemala story was buried for 60 years. It was only discovered in 2010 by historian Susan Reverby, who found the files in an archive. In the late 1940s, the same public health service that was running Tuskegee, specifically a doctor named John Cutler, went to Guatemala. In Tuskegee, they merely observed the disease. In Guatemala, they created it. They wanted to test if penicillin could prevent syphilis after exposure. To do this, they needed to infect people. They recruited prisoners, soldiers, and patients in mental asylums, people who had zero ability to refuse. The methods were horrific. Initially, they paid syphilis-infected sex workers to have sex with the prisoners. When that didn't transmit the disease fast enough, they switched to direct inoculation. They would abrade the skin of the men's penises and pour syphilis bacteria onto the wounds. They injected pus into the spines and even the eyes of mental patients. This was not medical research. It was torture, masquerading as science. Approximately 1,300 people were exposed. While some received penicillin, many were left untreated or undertreated. The study yielded no useful scientific data and was abandoned in 1948. Why Guatemala? Because they knew they couldn't get away with this in Indiana. This represents the double standard of international research. Researchers export the risk to the global south, taking advantage of lax regulations, poverty, and the deference shown to American doctors. They treat foreign bodies as expendable test subjects for treatments that will ultimately benefit American patients. When the story broke in 2010, the US government formally apologized to Guatemala, but the damage was done. It stands as a stark reminder that ethics must be universal. You cannot cross a border and leave your conscience behind. Now let's return to US soil. The year is 1963. The place is the Jewish Chronic Disease Hospital in Brooklyn. Dr. Chester Southam, a prominent cancer researcher from Sloan Kettering, wanted to understand the immune system. He knew that healthy people reject transplanted cancer cells quickly. He wanted to see if debilitated people rejected them slower. He approached the hospital and got permission to inject live cancer cells into 22 chronically ill, elderly patients. These patients did not have cancer. They had dementia, arthritis, and other age-related frailty. The ethical breach here was the lack of consent. Southam claimed he got oral consent, but he admitted that he never used the word cancer. He told the patients he was doing a cell test or an immunology test. Why did he lie? He later testified, "I didn't want to scare them." He argued that the word cancer carries a phobia, and since he believed the cells were harmless because they would be rejected, telling them the truth would cause unnecessary anxiety. This is paternalism at its worst. The doctor deciding what the patient needs to know, stripping them of the agency to say, "No, I don't want your cancer cells." This study was stopped because of 3 young doctors. When Southam asked the hospital residents to perform the injections, 3 of them refused. They cited the Nuremberg Code. They said, "We are not shooting cancer into senile patients without their consent." The hospital administration threatened them, accused them of being emotional, and they eventually resigned or were pushed out. But they didn't go quietly. They went to the board of directors and eventually to the New York State Board of Regents. This triggered a legal investigation that stripped Southam of his medical license for 1 year, though it was stayed to probation. It is important to note that Southam didn't see himself as a villain. He pointed out that he had injected himself and his colleagues first to prove it was safe. He argued that the risk to the patients was negligible compared to the knowledge gained about the immune system. This reveals the high priest attitude of mid-century science. Researchers believed they were on a holy mission to cure disease, and that gave them the moral authority to make decisions for the lay people. They believed the end justified the means. The regent's ruling struck this down, stating that a physician has no right to withhold information from a patient to secure their cooperation in a non-therapeutic experiment. Both Guatemala and JCDH reveal a pattern. Researchers target the institutionalized. They go where the people are locked up: prisons, asylums, chronic care wards. Why? Because it's convenient. The subjects are there, they are compliant, and they are invisible to the wider society. This is the danger of ethical relativity, the idea that it's okay to use these asterisk people, because they are already sick, or already condemned, or already useless to society. Bioethics insists that the human rights of a prisoner in Guatemala or a dementia patient in Brooklyn are identical to the rights of the researcher himself. These cases, along with Tuskegee, built the pressure for the National Research Act. They proved that we cannot trust researchers to police themselves. We need independent eyes, the IRB. They also shifted the standard from oral consent, which is easy to fake, to written, documented consent. Finally, they highlight the critical role of the whistleblower. The heroes of these stories are the junior staffers, Peter Buxton, the 3 Brooklyn doctors, who risked their careers to say no. Ethical leadership often looks like insubordination. To conclude, Lesson 4, we have seen how the research enterprise can become predatory, seeking out the path of least resistance to get data. Whether crossing a border to Guatemala or walking down the hall to the geriatric ward, the impulse is the same: to use the vulnerable as tools. In our final lesson of this module, we will look at the most difficult population of all: children. We will examine the Willowbrook State School, where the line between care and experimentation became hopelessly blurred. I'll see you then.